A harbour separates a remote suburb from the pulse of city life. At all times, a hidden lifeline is hard at work bridging this gap. Unseen, unheard, a fibre optic cable runs across the harbour floor, a vital artery that keeps the suburb at pace with the inner city. But submarine cables also cross the world's largest oceans, which cover more than 70% of the Earth's surface. A vast web of submarine cables now interconnects the modern world. This network totals over 1 million kilometres in length and carries hundreds of millions of simultaneous calls and untold amounts of data. How does this remarkable infrastructure manage to ceaselessly perform at such a staggering capacity? The challenges of protecting submarine cables have been apparent since the earliest days of their operation. In 1850, a submarine telegraph cable was laid between Dover and Calais, heralding the dawn of a communication revolution. Yet, after delivering only a few short messages, it was hauled aboard and cut by a curious fisherman. The first successful telegraph link between Britain and North America was completed in 1866. Less than a century later, in the 1950s, the first telephone conversations crossed the Atlantic thanks to the development of coaxial cables. But it was the development of fibre optic cables in the 1980s that would truly change international communication forever. A fibre optic cable contains a number of hair-thin glass fibres that deliver digital signals travelling at the speed of light.
They handle huge amounts of data easily and with great speed.
The first transoceanic submarine fibre optic cable was laid in December 1988, around the same time the internet was being developed. These advances complemented each other perfectly and resulted in the launch of the World Wide Web in the early 1990s, another giant leap in international communication. The growing network of fibre optic submarine cables enabled large volumes of voice and data traffic to be rapidly and economically accessed around the world. The 1866 transatlantic telegraph cable carried 7 words a minute at a cost of around £1 per word. Fibre optic cables of the early 21st century can carry tens of millions of channels and can cost a few cents for unlimited time. Whether it is making a phone call, sending an email, booking airline tickets, downloading a movie, video conferencing, or just surfing the net, over 95% of telecommunications traffic that anyone receives from overseas now arrives via submarine cable. Economies and societies have come to depend on the system of reliable, instantaneous and cheap communication. Trillions of dollars are exchanged across the global network every day. Protecting the cable network is therefore of paramount importance. For over 50 years, the International Cable Protection Committee, representing the cable industry, has had a vital role to promote awareness of submarine cables, to establish standards for cable installation, protection and maintenance, and to observe and participate in the evolution of international treaties ensuring that cables are fully protected. The ICPC is also a forum to exchange technical, legal and environmental information, and now comprises 100 member companies from 50 countries. The importance of submarine cables and their benefit to humanity have always been recognised. Accordingly, they have been enshrined in international treaties since 1884. Cables are currently protected under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which promotes the cooperation of all nations in the management of cables, both in international waters and exclusive economic zones. There is a need to maintain harmony between seabed users. While there is an unprecedented demand for cables, other human activities are also expanding offshore. And faults do occur, the main cause being bottom trawl fishing and ships anchoring. A key role of the ICPC is to provide guidance to maritime industries. When faults occur, they can be disruptive and costly, and can pose a significant danger to the vessel and crew. There are risks of capsizing and electrocution if a fishing vessel attempts to retrieve fouled equipment. The law protects cables from willful or negligent damage by fishing. Infringements may lead to fines or the impounding of vessels. However, if fouled vessels contact cable companies and voluntarily cut their gear loose, some compensation to these fishermen may be warranted. Submarine cables are continuously at the mercy of natural hazards. Storms can produce powerful waves and currents that stir the seabed and damage cables in shallow seas. Earthquakes that frequent the Pacific Rim and the Mediterranean may trigger massive submarine landslides.
These have tremendous power and can travel hundreds to thousands of kilometres in distance. And in the case of cables, if these currents are large enough, they will break cables en route.
In late December 2006, a large earthquake shook southern Taiwan and set off a submarine landslide that broke cables as it flowed down the seabed. The repercussions were vast. Commerce, travel, and communication across East Asia were seriously impaired. It took 11 ships 49 days to conduct repairs. And although most traffic was quickly rerouted via undamaged cables, internet delays were still apparent even 2 months after the earthquake. Many measures are taken to mitigate the impacts of natural and human-induced hazards. These include improvements in cable design, route planning, and hazard assessment, and cable burial to protect against anchors and fishing trawls in shallow waters.
We try to protect the cables by burying them. When we look at causes of faults for cables, around about 70% of cable faults are caused by bottom trawl fishing and ships anchoring. So these human activities we counter by burying the cables 1 to 3 metres below the seabed.
These efforts have been rewarded with a marked decrease in cable faults. In addition, cable protection zones can be created by a coastal state to restrict or ban high-risk activities such as fishing and anchoring. These protection zones may be several kilometres wide and extend up to water depths of 2,000 metres. Nautical charts showing cable locations and protection zones are readily available to skippers in electronic and print forms. Recovery of cables from the seabed is sometimes necessary due to damage, failure, or redundancy. A few maintenance groups, representing a large cooperative of cable operators, undertake most repairs using cable repair ships that are on standby at ports around the world. Global coverage allows immediate rerouting of traffic to alternative cables with spare capacity, even following serious breakages. Repairs are generally fast and reliable, but can be hindered by delays in permit applications to coastal states. Disputed waters can lead to legal issues, but lenience is needed in accordance with international law, as fault locations are often uncertain. The ICPC encourages the establishment of a single point of contact for all cable issues within the territorial waters of each state, as well as the development and testing of emergency response plans. Modern survey techniques allow cable route planners to avoid ecologically sensitive areas such as reefs. In fact, soft, muddy or sandy substrates are preferred, as they afford protection to cables by allowing burial. It is important to assess the environmental impact of submarine cables in the context of time and space. Yes, burial does cause seabed disturbance, but it's very limited in scale and is non-repetitive. Burial scars rarely exceed a few metres in width, and in soft substrates on high-energy coasts are rapidly repaired by the action of waves and currents.
There is some disturbance of the seabed without a doubt. But when we're dealing with the continental shelf, in other words, water depths shallower than about 120 metres, whatever disturbance is caused heals quite rapidly.
Modern cables are made with inert, non-toxic materials and have a design life of 25 years. These factors mean that properly installed cables have very little environmental effect. Cables lying on the seafloor have often been known to actually encourage the growth of marine organisms, acting as artificial reefs. One challenge for the continued security of the global network is the effects of climate change. Natural hazards currently account for only 10% of all cable faults, but this figure may increase if predictions of climate change hold true. Increased storminess and sea level rise will put shallow cables and coastal facilities at risk. Indirect effects are also likely, as patterns of human activities shift in response to global change. Trawl fishing is already entering new parts of the ocean as fish stocks migrate and decline, and there's an increasing size and number of merchant ships along new shipping lanes. The submarine cable network has developed incredibly quickly and is now essential in the functioning of modern societies. However, we live in a time of significant social and environmental change. The seabed is under unprecedented pressure by human activities and natural agents. The ICPC will continue to provide leadership and guidance to all users of the seabed. This will ensure that the critical infrastructure of submarine cables will remain secure in this exciting new age of global connectivity.